She didn't know his name, but when he stumbled in the rain, she didn't think twice. She helped him just like she would anyone. The next day, his presence in her life would change everything. Before we dive deeper into their story, I have to ask, do you believe a small act of kindness can change the course of your life? If you've ever stepped in when no one else would, drop your answer in the comments below. And if you're someone who believes in second chances, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this one ends. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The rain came down hard, slapping against the sidewalk like tiny fists. It was just another dreary Tuesday in downtown Chicago. Gray skies, damp streets, and the cold settling into your bones as soon as you stepped outside. For most people, it was just another dreary afternoon. For Tasha, it was the usual shift at Maddie's Diner, a place that didn't have much to offer except a warm cup of coffee and the promise of a few hours of quiet work. Tasha had been a waitress at Maddie's for 3 years, and she knew all the faces that came in, the regulars, the businessmen in their expensive suits, the mothers with strollers, the tired office workers who came in for their lunch breaks. No one ever really saw her, though, not beyond the apron, not beyond the coffee refills. She had long since learned to keep her head down, smile when necessary, and work without complaint. What else could she do? She had bills to pay, a mother to help, and little more than her shift to keep her grounded. Her eyes flicked over to the clock hanging above the counter. 4:43 p.m. The dinner rush was still a couple of hours away, which meant the diner would be quiet for a while. Perfect. She could at least catch up on some side work, wiping down tables, refilling sugar packets, checking the napkin dispenser. That's when she saw him. An older man, maybe in his late 70s, walked shakily past the windows, his umbrella struggling against the wind and rain. His gray hair was soaked through, his jacket clinging to his thin frame. He looked like he might fall any second, but no one paid him any attention as he shuffled along. Most people were too busy with their own lives to notice an old man in trouble. Tasha's heart squeezed, and before she could think twice, she pushed through the door of the diner and stepped into the rain, feeling the cold hit her like a slap. The man was getting closer to the curb now, barely able to hold his balance. She rushed toward him, her feet splashing through puddles. "Hey, sir, you okay?" she called out, her voice cutting through the noise of the rain. He glanced up, startled, as if he hadn't expected anyone to notice him. He tried to straighten, but his body seemed to betray him, swaying slightly. I'm fine," he muttered, his voice weak. He attempted to adjust his umbrella, but it flipped inside out, the wind catching it and ripping it from his hands. Tasha wasn't having it. "Here, let me help you," she said, gently grabbing his arm. "Let me just get you inside. You're soaked." He hesitated, then allowed her to guide him toward the warmth of the diner. She held the door open, and he stepped inside, his face a mixture of embarrassment and relief. Tasha helped him to the closest booth, the scent of hot coffee and grease filling the air. "Thank you," he said, sinking down into the seat with a tired sigh. I didn't expect anyone to help me." She shrugged, wiping the rain off her jacket. "You're welcome. It's just what anyone would do." She turned to go back behind the counter, but something stopped her. The man was staring at her, his tired eyes softening. "What's your name?" "Tasha," she said, turning to meet his gaze. The old man nodded slowly, as if the name meant something, but he didn't say more. For a moment, there was just the sound of rain tapping against the windows and the occasional hum of the diner's fluorescent lights. "Nice to meet you, Tasha," he said, his voice almost a whisper. Before she could say anything else, he raised his hand in a small wave, signaling that he was done. Tasha turned back to the counter, shaking off the feeling that something important had just passed between them, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Minutes later, the man left, paying his bill with a nod. He didn't leave a tip, most didn't, but Tasha wasn't upset. It wasn't about the money. It was the fact that, for one moment, she hadn't been invisible. Back behind the counter, Tasha resumed her work, but something had shifted inside her. She felt a small spark, Like maybe there was still a chance that someone, somewhere, might see her as more than just a waitress. Her thoughts drifted to her mother, her mounting bills, the dream of something more than this diner. She shook her head, trying to push the thought away. Dreams didn't pay the rent. She glanced out the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the soft glow of the streetlights. She wasn't expecting anything to change. But the next morning everything did. But neither of them knew. This was just the beginning. What he was about to do for her would change the course of both their lives forever. The next day felt like any other. The morning shift at Maddie's diner was always the same. Tired customers, too many orders, too little time. Tasha barely had time to breathe between coffee refills and toast orders. The regulars came and went, most of them too caught up in their own lives to notice her. To them, she was just a face behind the counter, someone who filled up their cups and took their orders without a second thought. But Tasha noticed everything. She noticed the man who barely glanced at her when he paid the bill yesterday, and she noticed the small, quiet moments that everyone else missed. Still, she didn't expect him to come back. Not really. But then, just before the lunch rush, the bell above the diner door jingled. Tasha glanced up, expecting another customer in the sea of faces. Her eyes locked on him, the same old man from the night before. He looked a little different now, though. His soaked jacket was gone, replaced by a perfectly tailored one. His gray hair was neatly combed, and he carried himself with a confidence Tasha hadn't seen the day before. He stepped into the diner, looking around like he was searching for someone. His eyes landed on her, and she froze. Was he here to complain about something? Maybe he didn't like the service yesterday, but instead, he walked toward her. Tasha, right? His voice was steady, his smile gentle. I hope I didn't inconvenience you too much last night. She blinked, a little thrown off by his sudden reappearance. No inconvenience at all, she replied, trying to sound casual. How are you? The old man nodded, glancing around. I'm doing well, thank you. I wanted to come by again and... He hesitated for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. I've been thinking about what happened yesterday. You helped me when no one else did. And I don't forget things like that. Tasha's chest tightened. She wasn't sure what he meant, but the weight of his words hung in the air. She shifted on her feet, trying to keep her nerves in check. Can I help you with something? She asked, instinctively polite, but also unsure what he was asking for. The man smiled again, but this time, it was more like a knowing smile, one that spoke of things Tasha couldn't quite understand. Actually, yes, I was hoping to return the favor. You see, I run a company, a pretty big one, and I've been watching something unfold that doesn't sit right with me. Tasha furrowed her brow. What do you mean? He took a deep breath. I'm aware of the struggles you've been facing, the job you're working. I heard through a friend that there's a chance your position here might be in jeopardy. Downsizing, cuts, that sort of thing. And frankly, I think that's wrong. Your hard work deserves better. Tasha's heart skipped a beat. How could he possibly know that? She hadn't even told her family about the rumors at work. Just a quiet fear in her chest that the diner was going under, and with it, her job. Before she could gather her thoughts, the man was already handing her a business card. It was crisp, clean, and embossed with gold letters. Richard Carrington, CEO of Carrington Enterprises. Call me. Let's talk, he said, his voice calm but insistent. I can offer you something much more than what you're doing now. Something that will show you that people don't go unnoticed. Not on my watch. Tasha stared at the card in her hand, feeling a mixture of disbelief and confusion. A CEO? Of a company that sounded like something out of a magazine? She didn't know what to say. Her world felt small, so small compared to the polished, sleek business card that now weighed in her palm. I'm not sure what to say, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm just a waitress. He shrugged, as if the label didn't matter. I don't see you as just anything. I see someone who deserves better. Someone with more potential than this. I'll be in touch. And just like that, he turned and walked out of the diner, leaving Tasha standing there, holding his card like it might suddenly vanish if she blinked. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Tasha couldn't focus on her work. Every time she passed the counter, she found herself staring at the card in her hand. Richard Carrington, CEO. Why had he chosen her? She wasn't anyone special. She was just a waitress trying to get by. She could barely remember the rest of the shift. Her mind kept replaying the moment when he'd handed her that card. "People don't go unnoticed," he had said. The words lingered, pulling at something deep inside her that she had long buried, hope. But Tasha didn't know it yet. Richard Carrington's offer wasn't just a lifeline. It was a choice that would change everything for both of them. The next morning, Tasha sat in her small apartment, the business card from Richard Carrington still sitting on her kitchen counter. She hadn't called him. She couldn't bring herself to. The words he'd said the day before echoed in her mind. But the doubts followed quickly, louder, sharper. "People don't go unnoticed. You deserve better." But she wasn't sure if that was true. She was a waitress. What was she supposed to do with a fancy business card and a promise from a stranger? A stranger who was way out of her league. She had her life, and it wasn't glamorous. It was simple. The diner was her comfort zone, her safety net. It might not be perfect, but it was predictable. There she was needed. She knew exactly what was expected of her. But if she called him, if she stepped into his world, she would have to let go of everything she knew. And that terrified her. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her mom. "Have you heard about the layoffs at Maddie's? The new owner is cutting hours. Be careful, Tasha." Tasha stared at the screen, her heart sinking. She hadn't even told her mom about the rumors, but it seemed the news had already spread. The fear that had been sitting in the back of her mind was now a reality. She was at risk of losing everything. Her mom's message only made her stomach tighten more. She looked at Richard's business card again. Her fingers traced the edges of the crisp paper. Her thoughts swirled. Maybe it's just a coincidence, she thought. Maybe he was just being kind. Maybe I'm not cut out for a world like his. But deep down, she knew the truth. This was her chance. Tasha walked to the kitchen sink, rinsing a glass without really seeing it. Her mom had worked hard her whole life to keep their family afloat, often at the cost of her own dreams. Tasha had inherited that strength, that drive to survive. But somewhere along the way, she'd lost sight of what it meant to dream. Really dream. Richard had given her a chance to escape the cycle, to finally have something for herself. But it wasn't easy to admit that maybe she was worth more than a diner apron and minimum wage. And even if she believed it, the world of high-end CEOs and expensive boardrooms felt like a foreign country. She wasn't sure she belonged there. What if I fail? What if they see me as just some girl from the diner? Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from Maddie's diner. An official notice about reduced hours and changes coming to the schedule. Tasha felt the weight of the email like a brick in her chest. She didn't have much time. With a deep breath, she grabbed her phone, swiped open the contact screen, and hovered over Richard's name. She had no idea what she was doing. Her fingers were shaking, and for a moment, she considered putting the phone down and pretending she hadn't seen it. But she couldn't. Not now. She tapped the screen and typed a simple message. "Hi, Mr. Carrington. I'd like to talk. When can we meet?" Her heart raced as she pressed send. Tasha hadn't expected the rush of emotions to hit her all at once. Fear, hope, regret. But she knew one thing for sure, her life was about to change. Tasha sat nervously in the small cafe on the corner of Madison and Fifth. It was a trendy place, filled with young professionals in smart outfits, typing away on laptops or having hushed conversations. The sound of espresso machines and soft jazz in the background felt distant to her. She felt out of place, like someone who had wandered into the wrong room. Her palms were sweaty, and her foot tapped anxiously under the table. She glanced down at her phone. No messages from Richard. Nothing. She almost stood up and left. What had she been thinking, agreeing to meet him here? She was just a waitress, just a girl from the wrong side of town. This was the world of million-dollar deals and high-end networking. Not hers. But then, the door chimed, and in walked Richard Carrington. She froze. The man who had walked into her life just 24 hours ago was different now. His black suit was sharp, the tie perfectly knotted. His presence filled the room like he owned it. He walked toward her without hesitation, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. She stood quickly, feeling suddenly self-conscious. He gave her a warm, calm smile, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "Tasha," he greeted, his voice low and steady, the way someone who knew exactly what they wanted spoke. "Mr. Carrington," she replied, her voice shaking slightly. She didn't know why she felt so nervous. This wasn't a job interview. This wasn't a date. But in some ways it felt like both. Richard gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Please sit. I'm glad you could make it." Tasha hesitated for a moment, then sat back down. She folded her hands in her lap, trying to keep her nerves under control. "I was thinking about what you said yesterday," Richard began, after taking a seat, "about how you've been feeling stuck. And I want to make something clear." His eyes locked onto hers. "I didn't offer to help you because I felt sorry for you. I offered because you have potential. I see something in you, something more than what you're doing now." Tasha's chest tightened. She couldn't figure out whether he was just being kind or if he really believed in her. Potential. It was a word she hadn't heard much before, felt foreign in her mouth. "She has potential." She swallowed, trying to find her voice. I don't know if I can do something like this. I've never been in that world. I've spent my whole life just getting by. I don't have a fancy education. I don't know the right people." Richard leaned in slightly, his gaze steady. "You don't need any of that. What you need is someone who believes in you. And I do." Tasha looked away, staring at the coffee cup in front of her. She didn't feel worthy of his words. And yet, something inside her stirred. She'd worked her whole life to stay invisible, to remain unnoticed. She never expected someone like him to see her, to believe in her. "I know it's hard to believe," Richard continued, sensing her hesitation. "But trust me when I say that I can give you the tools, the support, to build something much bigger than this." He paused. "I'm not asking you to jump in right away. I'm offering you a chance to take control of your life." Tasha didn't know what to say. The weight of his offer was overwhelming. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, looking at the unknown below. She started, but the words caught in her throat. She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. She didn't know what to do, what to say. She felt like she was on the verge of something huge, something terrifying. Richard didn't push. He simply sat back in his chair and gave her space. "Take your time, Tasha. I'm not in a rush. But just know that this opportunity is real. If you decide to take it, I'll be here." For a long moment they sat in silence. The hum of conversation around them faded as Tasha processed his words. She could feel the pressure building in her chest. There was no going back now. This was her moment, her decision. But was she ready? She glanced around the cafe, the faces of the people seated at nearby tables blurring in the background. All she could hear was the pounding of her own heartbeat. She had dreamed of more. She had dreamed of a life where she wasn't just getting by. But was she brave enough to leave everything behind for it? Richard's presence, steady and confident, made her feel small in comparison. How could someone like her, someone who had spent her life serving others, ever fit into his world? He saw something in her, but could she see it in herself? Tasha's hands shook as she picked up her coffee cup. She hadn't made a decision yet, but Richard's words kept ringing in her ears, each one pulling her closer to something she wasn't sure she could handle. "I'm not in a rush," he had said, but she felt the weight of time pressing against her chest, and she knew, whatever she decided, her life was about to change. Tasha couldn't stop thinking about the cafe meeting. Richard's words, so clear and certain, had followed her all the way home. She had spent the night tossing and turning, torn between what she knew and what he was offering. The opportunity felt like a dream, but every time she tried to reach for it, the reality of her life held her back. She had spent the past few years just scraping by, working double shifts, making just enough to get by. It had been hard, and it had been enough. She had learned to live without much. But now, Richard's offer felt like something beyond what she had ever imagined. It was more than just a job. It was a chance to change her life, to be seen, to have a future that wasn't dictated by the tiny world of the diner. But there was a catch. Every time she tried to picture herself in his world, among the business meetings, the sharp suits, the polished floors, she felt out of place. What if they didn't see her for who she really was? What if she wasn't enough? She tried to push the thoughts aside, but they clung to her. She couldn't make a decision. She couldn't let herself believe that she deserved better. The next morning, Tasha went to work at Maddie's. The usual crowd was there, regulars who didn't know her name but knew her coffee order. She moved between tables, refilling cups and taking orders, trying to keep her mind focused on the job. But her mind kept wandering back to Richard's offer. Then, just as she was walking to the back to grab another round of coffee mugs, she overheard a conversation between two of the waitresses. "Did you hear? They're cutting more hours. And I heard the new owners are looking to make changes, maybe even shut this place down," one said, her voice low. Tasha's stomach dropped. She had suspected that the rumors about layoffs were true, but hearing it confirmed made it real. Her worst fear was starting to unfold. The diner was in trouble, and so was her job. Tasha turned to leave the back room, her heart heavy. She wasn't just worried about losing her job. She was worried about losing everything. The life she had built, the one that felt safe even if it wasn't perfect, was slipping away. As she walked back to the counter, Richard's face flashed in her mind. Maybe he's right, she thought. Maybe I do deserve more. But before she could get lost in those thoughts again, the manager, Danny, called her over. "Tasha, can I talk to you for a second?" he said, his face tense. Tasha nodded, her nerves creeping back up. "Sure." He led her to the small office in the back of the diner, where the light was dim and the air smelled of grease. Danny shut the door behind them and sat down across from her, his hands clasped tightly on the desk. "I hate to say this, but we have to let you go," he said, his voice apologetic. "Business has been rough. You know that. And with the new owners coming in, they've decided to cut back on staff." Tasha's breath caught in her throat. Her worst fear had just come true. She was out of a job. Just like that. "You've been great, Tasha," Danny continued. "But things are changing. It's not personal." Her hands shook as she nodded. But the truth was, it felt very personal. This was her life. This was everything she had worked for. "Don't worry. We'll pay you through the end of the month. You can finish your shifts, but you're done after that." He gave her a sad smile. "I'm really sorry." Tasha stood there for a moment, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under her. Everything she had tried to hold on to was slipping away, faster than she could catch it. She left the diner in a daze, the late afternoon sun doing nothing to lift her spirits. The weight of the conversation with Danny pressed down on her chest. She had no job, no backup plan, and her dreams of a better life seemed further away than ever. Tasha walked aimlessly through the streets, her mind swirling with thoughts. She had no choice now. If she stayed in this town, she would keep losing things. The diner, her job, maybe even her sense of security. She couldn't keep going like this. As she passed a small park, she saw children playing on the swings, laughing and shouting to each other. The sound made her heart ache. They're living their lives, she thought. They don't have to worry about things like this. They don't know what it's like to constantly fight for something more. But what if she could change? What if she could break free from the chains of what she thought was possible and take a chance on something bigger? That's when she realized something. This wasn't just about her job. This wasn't just about keeping things as they were. It was about her life, about stepping into the unknown and taking the opportunity Richard had offered her. With a deep breath, she pulled out her phone and dialed Richard's number. Her heart pounded as the phone rang. She didn't know what she was going to say, but she knew one thing for sure. This was her moment. She wasn't going to let it slip away. Tasha sat in her small apartment, staring at the phone in her hand. The call she had made to Richard earlier still echoed in her mind. She had done it. She had taken the leap, made the call, and now she was sitting here waiting for his response. her heart thudding in her chest. Her mind was racing. She didn't know what she was expecting from him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was hanging in the balance. If he said yes, if he gave her a chance, she would have to step into a world so far from the one she knew. And that terrified her. She picked up the glass of water in front of her and took a sip, her hands trembling. The apartment felt empty. Her thoughts echoed off the bare walls. The couch, the coffee table, the single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Everything was so small, so temporary. The phone buzzed, and Tasha's heart skipped. She stared at the screen, seeing Richard's name flash up. "Hey Tasha, it's Richard. Let's talk tomorrow. How about 9 a.m. at the office? I'll send the address." The message was clear. He was giving her a chance. But as her fingers hovered over the phone, something inside her resisted. She couldn't just jump in, not without thinking this through. Was she really ready to leave everything behind? Tasha leaned back in her chair, rubbing her eyes. This was the moment where she would either take a step toward something bigger, or stay where she was safe, familiar, but stuck. The memories of the diner, the smells of coffee brewing, the sound of plates clattering, the faces of customers who barely noticed her, flashed in her mind. That was her life. She knew it like the back of her hand. But she also knew it wasn't enough. And no matter how hard she tried to hold on to it, things were changing. She thought of her mom, the sacrifices she had made for their family, the long hours, the late nights, the dreams that were put on hold for the sake of survival. Tasha had always promised herself that she wouldn't settle. But now, faced with the possibility of real change, she wasn't sure if she had the courage to make it happen. Was she really prepared to risk it all? A small knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Tasha stood up quickly, wiping her hands on her jeans. She opened the door, and there was her mom, standing with a grocery bag in hand. "Hey Tasha, thought you might need some stuff. You've been looking a little off lately," her mom said, stepping inside. Tasha smiled weakly, though she couldn't hide the tension in her shoulders. "Thanks, Mom," Tasha said, taking the bag from her. "I've just been thinking a lot about things." Her mom sat down on the couch, pulling her legs up to her chest. "I know you've got a lot on your mind, but I can see it in your eyes. You're trying to figure out what's next." "Huh." Tasha nodded, setting the bag on the counter. She didn't say anything for a moment, just watched her mom as she always had. A woman who had worked every day of her life, barely asking for anything. And now here she was worried about her daughter. "Mom, what if I fail?" Tasha finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if this isn't the life for me? What if I'm not cut out for it?" Her mom sighed, a long, weary sigh. She leaned forward and looked at Tasha with soft eyes. "Tasha, I know you're scared. I've seen it in your face for years. But you're stronger than you think. You've always been. And if anyone deserves to take a shot at something better, it's you." Tasha felt a lump rise in her throat. "But what if I fall flat on my face?" Her mom reached out, taking her hand gently. "We all fall sometimes, but that's not what matters. What matters is getting up, and knowing you tried. No one's ever gotten anything by staying small." Tasha felt the weight of her mom's words settle over her. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to truly think about what it would be like to let go of fear, to leave the diner behind, to stop playing it safe. She thought about Richard again, his face, his calm confidence. He believed in her, but she had to believe in herself too. This wasn't just about taking his offer, it was about showing herself that she could do it. Her mind was clearer now. The fear was still there, but it wasn't as loud. She stood up, walked to her phone, and typed out a response to Richard. "I'll be there tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you for giving me a chance." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The message was sent. But now, as Tasha stood there, her hand trembling slightly, she knew something deep inside. She wasn't just stepping into a new job, a new life. She was stepping into herself. The next morning, Tasha stood in front of the large office building, her heart racing. The glass doors loomed ahead, as if they were the threshold between her past and the future she hadn't been sure she deserved. The city's buzz filled the air, cars honking, people rushing by, their footsteps clicking sharply on the pavement. But all of it felt distant to her now. Nothing mattered except what she was about to do. She stood still for a moment, taking a deep breath. She had gotten herself this far. She couldn't back out now. But she wasn't sure if she was ready to walk through those doors, to step into a world that felt so unfamiliar, so polished. She had spent years working in the diner, in a place where people didn't care what she looked like or where she came from. But this was different. Here, she would have to prove herself. Tasha pushed the door open. The lobby was sleek, the floors shining under the bright overhead lights. A receptionist behind a desk looked up at her with a polite smile. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked, her voice too perfect, too clean. "I'm here to see Mr. Richards," Tasha said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Of course," the receptionist replied, picking up the phone. "I'll let him know you're here." Tasha nodded, glancing around the room, feeling out of place. She ran a hand through her hair, suddenly feeling self-conscious. Her clothes weren't bad, but they weren't designer suits either. She had never been one to care much about appearances. But today, standing in this pristine lobby, she felt every inch the outsider. The receptionist gestured toward the elevator. "He's expecting you, right on the top floor." Tasha nodded and stepped into the elevator, the doors closing behind her. As the elevator hummed upwards, the quiet tick of the floors passing made her pulse quicken. It was like being on the edge of a cliff, and every floor she passed felt like a step closer to something she couldn't quite grasp. When the doors finally opened on the top floor, she stepped out into a vast, open office space. It was nothing like the cramped corners of the diner. Everything here felt deliberate. Every desk, every chair, every view of the city beyond the glass windows. She felt a wave of doubt hit her. She didn't belong here. She was just a waitress. But as she stood there, taking it all in, she remembered the words her mom had said. "You're stronger than you think." "Ms. McCall, good to see you," Richard's voice called out, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned to find him standing a few feet away, his suit looking crisp and polished. He smiled at her, and something about his calm demeanor made her feel a little less like an intruder. "Thank you for meeting me, Richard," she said, forcing a smile. "Of course," he replied, his eyes steady. "Let's talk." They sat down in a sleek meeting room with a long glass table, Richard across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Tasha had rehearsed what she would say. She had even written it down in a notebook the night before. But now, facing him, the words felt hollow. She didn't know if she could pull this off. She didn't know if she could fit into his world. Richard studied her for a moment, his eyes sharp but not unkind. "You're wondering if you can make it here, aren't you?" Tasha looked down at her hands, her fingers fiddling with the edge of the table. "I'm just worried that I'm not enough." Richard leaned forward slightly, his tone gentle. "You wouldn't be here if I didn't think you were. The world's full of people who play it safe, Tasha. They never take the risks that change things. But you're different. I saw it the moment you helped that old man. I see it now, sitting across from me." She swallowed, her chest tightening. "He really believes in me." "You have to make the decision," Richard continued. "You can stay where you are and keep doing what you've been doing, but nothing will change. Or you can take a chance on yourself, on this opportunity. And I'm telling you, if you take it, I'll be here to back you up every step of the way." Tasha's heart hammered in her chest. She wasn't sure if she was ready for this. The fear was still there, swirling in her mind. But Richard was right. She had spent her entire life playing it small, doing what was safe. She was tired of living that way. She looked up at Richard, her voice steady now. "I'm ready." Richard's face softened, and he gave her a slow nod. "Good. But just remember, nothing comes without a cost. You'll have to work harder than you ever have before. You'll have to push yourself, challenge everything you've known. And it won't always be easy. But if you're willing to do that, you'll succeed." Tasha nodded, her stomach knotting at the thought of what lay ahead. She wasn't naive. She knew this wouldn't be easy, but she wasn't walking away anymore. She wasn't afraid of the unknown anymore. As she walked out of the building, the cool breeze of the city hit her face, and for the first time in a long while, she felt alive. She wasn't sure what was coming next, but she knew one thing for sure. She had taken the first step. Months had passed since Tasha walked into that shiny office building, unsure of who she was or where she was going. Today, as she stood in front of the same building, the nerves she had once felt were gone. She was different now. The cool morning air brushed against her skin as she took a deep breath. Her new suit fit her perfectly, and her heels clicked against the sidewalk with each confident step she took toward the entrance. It wasn't just the clothes that had changed. It was her. She had worked tirelessly, proving to herself that she belonged here, that she was capable of more than she had ever believed. The elevator ride was no longer a race to steady her nerves. The hum of the machinery felt familiar now, like a constant hum of progress. She had earned her place. As she stepped off the elevator on the top floor, she could already feel the shift. The people who had once seemed like strangers in this polished world now greeted her with respect, acknowledging the hard work she'd put in. She had come a long way since that first meeting with Richard. Richard was standing by his office door, smiling when he saw her. There was a genuine warmth in his eyes, a recognition of how far they both had come. "Good morning, Tasha," he said, his voice calm but filled with pride. "You've been doing great. I'm proud of everything you've achieved so far." Tasha returned his smile, feeling the weight of his words. It wasn't just about the work anymore. It was about the person she had become. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied, her voice sincere. "You were right, Richard. It was all about taking the chance on myself." Richard chuckled, shaking his head. "No, Tasha. You always had it in you. You just needed to believe it." Later that afternoon, as Tasha sat at her desk reviewing the reports, something caught her eye. A small gift wrapped in a simple white box, placed neatly in front of her computer. She opened it carefully, revealing a delicate silver bracelet with an engraving that read, "You are enough." Her heart swelled. It wasn't from Richard, though she could sense his approval in the gesture. This was from someone else. She had received a note too, folded inside the box. "I saw you when no one else did. You were always enough. I'm proud of the woman you've become." Tasha's eyes welled up. She knew exactly who had left it. Her mom. Her mom had been her rock, the one who always believed in her. The one who had raised her on hope, even when it felt like hope was all they had. And now, that belief was not just a mother's love. It was the truth. Tasha had made it. She had stepped out of the shadows of fear and into her own light. As the day wound down, Tasha stood by the large windows of the office building. Looking out over the city she had grown to know and love. The sky was painted with streaks of orange and pink, the sun setting in the distance. It was a moment of quiet victory. She remembered the days when she had wondered if she would ever be more than just a waitress at the diner. She had doubted herself so many times, let fear hold her back. But now here she was. She had everything she had ever dreamed of. The phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. She looked down at the screen. It was a message from her mom. "I'm proud of you. You've always been strong. I love you." Tasha smiled, wiping away the single tear that had escaped down her cheek. Her heart felt full. Her mom was right. Tasha had always been strong, and now she had everything to prove it. Later that evening, as Tasha walked out of the building, the night air was crisp and cool. She looked up at the stars above, the city lights twinkling in the distance. She had made it, and as she walked to her car, she realized that the best part of it all wasn't the success, or the office, or even the recognition. It was the journey. She had taken a chance on herself, and it had changed everything. Tasha smiled to herself, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She was no longer just the girl from the diner. She was someone who had found her place in a world that once felt out of reach. Do you believe in the power of second chances? Tasha's story shows that even when life feels like it's not going your way, it only takes one brave step to change everything. Do you think anyone can turn their life around? Or is some success just out of reach? Drop a heart in the comments if you've ever believed in yourself when no one else did. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.